I'm going to be inviting in a few excellent people from the division. We have Matt Chapman, our Waste Management Prevention Division Director, might be off camera at times, and Anna Borkowski, our Hazardous Waste Program Manager. Anna, everybody clap. We'll be talking about lots of stuff, but let me first set the stage with some new information. And thanks for joining us, everybody, on an afternoon, kind of throwing out these meetings as best we can. And I know everybody's busy. So if you need to jump off or if you need to ask a question, feel free to just raise your hand and we'll try and get to you. In the solid waste program, we're still kind of in reaction mode. I've learned a lot more about the state's debris contractor, which is really housed at the Vermont Emergency Management Office, which is really the State Emergency Operations Center, SEOC, which is an acronym that I'm totally learned up on now. We have Dennis, Jeff Bordeaux, and Stephen Young, our newest employee, staffed there all week and into next week. So really until further notice, they're there to take in calls from those that need services when they can't get them. So I think the communities that I know have been impacted pretty badly are buried in Montpelier, and there's been several other communities that have been calling, looking for services from the SEOC. Johnson, Ludlow was called. I think even maybe Londonderry might have been called or discussed, but no one else has, other than Berry City, Berlin, and Montpelier, are really asking for help beyond what the locals can supply at this moment. And I'll get into that in a little bit of detail. But first off, let me just say that I've become aware that nothing is free, which is a good lesson for all of us to know. Whether we are hiring local contractors or we're hiring Chittenden Solid Waste District to come down to Central Vermont or Rutland to come over to Londonderry, we all need to make sure our staff are paid. So nothing is free, but if local resources have been exhausted, the state does have a debris contractor we can engage. They're called Ceres Environmental, that's CERES, and Stephen has been primary contact with them. But if you wanted to engage them, you would call the State Emergency Operations Office. Yes, Matt.
So to be clear, so this is a contract that's basically a contract of last resort for municipalities, right? So your town is the one that is ultimately responsible for debris management with FEMA. If the town and you as their sort of assistant doesn't have the capacity to help manage a particular waste stream, that's when this contract kicks into play, right? So towns are the first line sort of responsibility for debris management. We're a contract where the Ceres contract is basically the contract of last resort.
Yep. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Matt. I think we still have two issues for solid waste that's occurred from this flood. One is just general debris management and movement, and the other is the toxic stuff, the HHW, household hazardous waste and other materials we want out of that. I want to thank this group for showing up for each other, and I think we'll have a pause here in a minute to talk about what services you might be able to share, or if there's any more to share between each other. And another category of waste that we've been talking with Anna about, some small quantity generator, very small quantity generator waste, and how those businesses can take advantage of possible services such that they are.
And I would throw in there, it's not just the very small quantity notified generators. There are stores that on a routine basis do not generate waste at all, but they have products that got ruined, that the products themselves are hazardous. So there are stores that have never had to deal with any kind of hazardous waste in the past until now, where they have damaged hazardous materials that are becoming waste and they have to do something with that. So it's a mixture of people that should know some basic rules about management of hazardous waste, and they just might have more of it to deal with in places that are businesses. So HHW is not applicable to them, but that will have waste as a result of this disaster, and they're going to have no clue what to do with it.
We go to Tom Kennedy. Tom?
Yeah, now you can. So we had a meeting this morning with the 5 towns in our area that have been hardest hit. None of the municipalities in our area can use their town road crews to pick up debris at the curbside. They do not have the staff. Solid waste companies in this area will pick it up, but they want it placed in roll-offs. And so what I'm trying to figure out is whether or not we can just put roll-offs out that are controlled and have the things put in there. But it ain't happening curbside. The town managers think that plan is nuts. So we need to change that.
I'm not sure I'm following you. Need to change what? The allowances for?
Right
how it's
now, the debris management plan says that debris needs to be brought to the curb and sorted. And there's no way we can manage the trash that way, because what that would entail is people lifting up bags of trash and putting into a packer or whatever. What they want to do is have the person who has the debris
We're losing you, Tom.
What didn't you hear?
We lost you at the person that has the debris. What we want to do is the person that has the debris.
To put it in a roll-off, not put it on the curb.
I believe there's something wrapped into your question, which is FEMA guidance and is it eligible?
FEMA guidance, that is not what the FEMA guidance states.
Right. And I am not a FEMA expert, but I'm becoming more aware of it. But all I can say is what I heard from the contractor who works with FEMA. And he said that is the FEMA guidance to separate it into those categories. I know that they toured Montpelier today for their first pickup, and Montpelier's debris is not separated very well. And they are going to be collecting it. But
Okay.
again, if
Okay,
the town
I'm
is
telling you
exhausted,
now,
it's local resources. Now you're breaking up again, Tom. I'm sorry.
What district was this?
This is Southern Windsor, Wyndham, Solid Waste. This is mostly Windsor County,
Okay.
but part of Northern Wyndham, Springfield.
Okay.
Weston, Ludlow. How about now, Tom? Try it now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. We're going to have debris on the side of the road for weeks. And it's going to smell, it's going to be a waste, it's going to be a health issue. And to bring in somebody from outside, out of the state to do this when we have the capacity here to do it, if they'll allow us to use roll-offs. But, you know, they want us to geopin where these things are going. I mean, they want them literally tracked to the different facilities. It's stupid. And we didn't do this in Irene and the like. And then secondly, as far as we're gearing up, just open up all these HHW collections. Are we getting paid for this or not? I cannot absorb the cost for collecting, sorting, and disposing of all this HHW in my little budget. And I'm not getting a clear answer on that, but that's another huge need for these towns.
Let's start with the first one. Let's start with the FEMA stuff. Matt, you were around in Irene. I mean, some towns have already started using roll-offs, and the guidance from our contractor and Stephen is to exhaust all local resources first, which is roll-off based. I mean, Kim is running, Casella and Myers' other trucks are running roll-offs 24/7 right now. I don't know if that will be FEMA eligible or not. I don't hold the keys to that.
So you guys are in charge of this. You got to figure this out.
So to be clear, Tom, like two things. One is I would love to give everyone on this call a definitive answer of what is and what's not FEMA eligible. But any of you who are around for Irene know that FEMA combines the worst parts of a regulatory agency with the worst parts of an insurance company, right? So they are a difficult nut for us to basically make any type of predictive statement of what will and what will not get covered at the end of the day. So let me say a couple things. Under FEMA's guidance, municipalities are primarily responsible. Municipalities, or they normally look at it from a county perspective based on how the United States is generally organized outside of Vermont. But for us, municipalities are primarily responsible for debris management, right? Your best way of getting FEMA reimbursement is following FEMA guidance. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to be deemed ineligible as long as you document heavily and can justify the approach you've taken with FEMA. I mean, I can't give you any better information than that. You know, again, we are there as a debris manager of last resort where municipal capacity has been exhausted and there's not the capability for a town to basically deal with. And I'm sorry, I wish I could do better than that. I mean, I don't know what to say, Tom.
I just think you can do better, and I'll work it on my own. I'll call Welch's office. I don't care, because solid waste districts are considered to be municipalities. And during Irene, we had contracts with FEMA.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, you still could.
But
I mean,
guys,
yeah.
we're working with the towns right now. I just think this is what we're hoping you guys will do, because you have the access to the SEOC. I mean, if we got to do it ourselves, fine. But yes, I'm frustrated.
I think the SEOC needs to hear your needs. I explained to the contractor and the SEOC, well, actually, I don't know if there was an SEOC rep.
So Tom, how about this? What we'll do is after the call, we will put an info request into the debris management task force at the SEOC to try and get some clarity on this issue. I'm not going to put a ticket in because they're trying to reserve tickets for basically resource requests, but we'll try and get some additional clarity. We'll send it out to the whole group as an email response to this, but you know, right as of this moment, I cannot give you a definitive response on what you're asking for.
And I apologize, I'm being excited, but the towns right now are spending a tremendous amount of money collecting debris and hoping they're going to get reimbursed.
Yep.
And we're not talking about big towns here. And
Tom,
so
I know.
we can give them some clarity as far as how to proceed. And we've done all the document stuff and blah, blah, blah. But a lot of these regulations that FEMA has made are basically for suburban and urban areas, not for rural America.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hear you. I hear your frustration, right? Like we aren't getting like super clear answers from our friends at FEMA either on some of these questions. So
yeah, the FEMA representative I was on the call didn't know they had guidance on 6 separation materials. So I was nonplussed by that when we were on the phone.
Okay.
All right, Esther.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I needed to clarify some things that were said, but also to ask some questions. So we are keeping track of the loads that go out with flood debris. Are you saying that, this is a multi-layer question, so I'll do it one at a time. Are you saying that FEMA wants the loads to be tracked, so we need to go where they're going and how much is in each load?
Yes.
Okay. We have businesses in the middle of town that were totally underwater. They've been cleaning up. I have noticed that they are hiring their own dumpsters. I would like to give them guidance. I know FEMA says, go to your insurance company first. And then what? That's what I want to know. And then what? What should I say to them that they could think that they might get reimbursed for what they're collecting? We have no curbside pickup in the 5 towns that I represent.
Right. I wish I was more of a FEMA expert, and maybe what I should try and do is get a FEMA rep to one of these calls. What I have found is that a lot of the action with FEMA is happening at the municipal level. That towns are getting guidance from economic development groups or the regional planning commissions or on FEMA stuff, or the league, the League of Cities and Towns. And I'm entering this much more green than Matt is on FEMA. This is my first time even understanding their guidance, their requirements. And so I can't adequately guide you. Marche.
Oh, I wasn't done.
I don't want to be a
All right,
smart,
Esther.
I don't want to be a smart guy. The way that works, Esther, is what they do is they contact their insurance company. Then they're going to go to FEMA and apply for individual assistance, which will be the difference between what they get for insurance reimbursement and for what they might be eligible. There is zero guarantee they're going to cover all of it. Generally, they do not. There are these community centers throughout. I believe you have one in Londonderry now. They should contact the community center, and FEMA is there, and they can get some guidance from FEMA.
Yeah, FEMA was here yesterday, and I think they're here today again.
Excuse me.
But, for basically handing out stuff and helping, I don't know. I'll go check with them again. Okay. Thank you. I am done.
Okay, Marche.
Yes, I have some FEMA experience, and a lot of the things where there's shadows or not clarity, they will default to what the state standard is,
Right.
or the state rule. So if there's a state rule that is not in FEMA, that ties to a task, it usually yields to that. And I'm not going to say that I know all the rules in solid waste, but I don't know if I've read anything about collecting trash for the districts. That's usually a private thing in Vermont. So, just the idea of, there's a few entities from a town that's looking to bring HHW to our depot as a part of this program. We're accepting it. Most of it's essentially paint and so forth like that. So it's part of EPR. But what if there's exotic chemicals that cost a lot of money? Now, if we're going by the municipality, just town, not municipal districts, I'd like to dovetail on Tom's idea that we are municipalities, and if that exists, do I apply for the cost that this town would have incurred, or does the town have to pay for it, or do the paperwork for the refund? If we're going to do a refund for $100, that's a lot of paperwork for $100, and I don't see us doing it. So perhaps the town who's doing it already could add these on there. It's just a thought of how we're going to track this paperwork.
Yeah, I had this question early on from Josh Esty at Chittenden, who is going to be collecting from Central Vermont Solid Waste District, and he said, for simplicity, he was going to build that district, and then Theron and Montpelier or whoever is at getting those services can file that as part of their FEMA claim. I do not know if that was what was done in Irene. He thought it was cleaner, and I agreed. It seemed cleaner. So I'm a little what you're talking about, Mark. Others that have experience on this?
Yeah, I am, and to say that John was doing, I think it's cleaner because our expenses where we are right now, we're okay, but just out on the fringes where there's other people that aren't, like in Ludlow and the surrounding areas. They're a town that is probably going to be applying for all this paperwork, and it's going to take a long time for them to get the money. And it'd be worthwhile if they can keep all those reimbursements together instead of having us doing it also. And are they going to be repeating itself? Or there's a lot more checks and balances that FEMA will have to go into. I just want to keep it simple, and if there's any expenses, try to make us whole.
I totally appreciate that, Mark. And so to bring us back up to 30,000 feet, the two issues are moving flood debris and moving and separating the HHW basically. And both are expensive. Kelly doesn't want the HHW mixed in with the trash at her facilities or for facility operators to have to deal with. And they both eventually need to move. The direction for use of the state contractor for both of these types of materials is still to exhaust local resources before they will move and mobilize. And the hard part, which is what I feel like I'm on the point of, is we don't know how to tell Mark Shea or the city of Weston that their dumpsterized flood debris is FEMA eligible, because we're not gatekeepers on FEMA. So it's a struggle for me to say that you have to exhaust those local resources before the state's contractor comes in. And by the way, the state's contractor is not free either. There is a potential cost share there. But again, if towns have reached their max and they have no other assets to help move material, they can reach out to the SEOC and talk to Stephen and other staff up there about what their options are. I know Barry, Berlin, and Montpelier are in the queue right now, and others could be added as well. Let me go, let me just pause for a second, go to Kelly Gleason. I want to talk briefly. Yesterday, we are aware the landfill is receiving a lot of material, so Kelly can give us an update on that. Casella has a lot of operations at commercial transfer stations. Most are pumping hard right now. And the key among those are Central Vermont, CV Transfer, All Cycle in Chittenden County, Highgate, and Hyde Park. Anything else, Kelly, you want to mention there?
Nope. So All Cycle is currently okay. We aren't seeing any super crazy wait times or backups at All Cycle. Hyde Park has come out of that initial crunch that we had last week because we allocated some extra resources there. CV is a mess. Long wait times, tons of material. We've moved cans from other facilities there to try to assist with that. Getting the okay to utilize outside on the ground is helping with that, but CV is going to be backed up for a while. My one question, maybe Ben, you could answer this. The week that was referenced in our sort of waiver, is that like Friday the, I don't know, let's say the 19th, the 21st, or was that like a week from yesterday?
Hey, Kelly, can I jump in? Can I jump
Yeah.
in here? I think we should stay put. There's going to be additional clarity coming out of the governor's office within the next 24 to 48 hours. So,
Thank you, Matt.
and I think it's going to provide some expanded sideboards on what's going on as far as the timeframes that you have flexibility in. Not to get in
Perfect.
front of what's going on, but that's what's going on.
Perfect.
And I'll just go ahead and say it's likely that some of the flexibility that we granted on a short-term basis is going to extend until the end of the emergency,
Okay,
the state of
great.
emergency.
Yeah, so that's just sort of our operational update. We're in good shape so far at the landfill. We're busy, but not overcapacitated or incapacitated. CV, we are expecting, we haven't actually gotten anything from downtown Montpelier yet from the city. So that's starting to come in tomorrow. So we're expecting tomorrow to get even uglier. So just, be aware of that. If and then please don't shoot the messenger here. This is just the feedback that we're getting. And just sort of an update on what we're doing. Like everybody talked about, it's expensive. People are complaining about the cost, especially CV, because we're seeing smaller loads of things come in. It was a suggestion that maybe the state fee be waived and the district fees be waived to bring the cost down. And what we're doing, we still have to pay to truck, pay to manage, all of these things. But we've switched to, we're no longer charging for individual items. So like if someone's bringing in, their own trailer full of like 5 soaking wet mattresses, we're not charging the individual processing fees on those. We're charging everything on a per ton basis, which is bringing the cost down more for those. So that's what we're we're doing it, it's streamlining the process too of we're just charging by the ton and no longer charging for any bulk individual items.
Got it.
So that's
Thanks,
just
Kelly.
feedback that we've gotten, and I
Well,
want to relay that.
On that one, Kelly, I think it's probably, if there's a desire by Casella, at least with respect to the franchise tax, to have conversations about whether that can or should be waived, can you have either Shelley or somebody from
Yeah.
Rutland give me a call?
Yeah,
And
sure
we
can.
can have a conversation about that.
And that
'cause
came from the field too.
What?
That came from ops. And in the
Sure, I
field,
mean,
too,
like, but I
so-
think that if we're gonna do this, I probably need to have a conversation with headquarters about making sure, because if it's probably gonna require fairly high level authorization at the state for something like that to happen. And I'm sure that you can appreciate that since the franchise tax is charged on you and not on the person who's that the rates are adjusted accordingly if the fee is waived, and making sure we have some
Absolutely.
sort of agreement or understanding that that is taking place prior to us taking any action on that.
You got it.
Thanks, Kelly. Anything else that you wanted to cover? And I,
No, I think, as far as the updates from 2 days ago, it's still the same. We've managed to clear up Hyde Park. Highgate's still doing okay. All Cycles managing. We thought we might see a little bit longer wait time at All Cycle today because we did take a lot of the cans from All Cycle and send them to CV, but we seem to be doing okay.
great. Thank you for leading into this one. This is definitely a crushing time right now. Let me finish with a little bit of the updates about how to get assistance, and then I want to go on to HHW and to Anna. Briefly though, from Stephen, who is at Mission Central, and he's learning this on the fly. So a town has exhausted all resources, right? And he describes it as there means that the staff are trying to get dumpsters and they're filling them up and they can't get them out, and they're working at full capacity and they're overwhelmed. They don't have enough services. You can call the SEOC. The town is the conduit for that. The SEOC and the state contractor does not provide dumpsters. He wants to be crystal clear about that. And that's part of what Tom Kennedy was complaining about a bit. There are a lot of requests for dumpsters, but what they do is provide support through the state emergency debris contractor to have them come and pick up debris on the streets right of way. They don't go into private residence, but they will go by private residence and collect this if they are engaged. It's not a free service, and it's uncertain at this time what portion will be covered by FEMA or by the towns. So once you get the towns into the queue, they start having a morning call with Stephen and the representatives from our contractor who can try and guide that process. So don't discourage people from calling, though. I would say if they're exhausted resources, then it's worth the call. The towns doing the cleanup. For FEMA assistance, it is still important to document. I know you guys know that, but taking pictures of the debris being cleaned up, of the dumpsters being filled, and note what is being picked up and the addresses they came from, and the approximate quantity of debris being picked up. I can send this out after. I know, Esther, you're shaking your head. Go ahead. What's your question? You're on mute.
So I'm sorry, you're saying the people that bring in the hazardous waste, not necessarily the flood debris, because that's almost impossible.
I'm talking about flood debris right now. Sorry.
Right. So everybody that brings in flood debris that puts it in a dumpster, which we're segregating into one of the containers, we have to have the names of those people?
Again, I'm just channeling what I've heard about FEMA. It may be that a city manager says, we know these residences were impacted on this street and can note those residences that filled that dumpster. This is the first time I've experienced this. I do not know anything more than that. And then lastly is the FEMA guidance on separation, which is to set them out of the curb. I do know from the contractor, they still will pick up the material. I mean, first of all, it's very hard, as he said, to bury a refrigerator under the pile, although I'm sure Kelly's seen it in her day or some of her staff have, it's usually separated anyway. And the contractor still picks it up. They might take several passes at this waste. And so that everybody's on the same page, this is everything from a pickup truck with a trailer where they're picking up maybe white goods or electronics or maybe even HHW, to them using a grapple truck where they're filling the truck with the flood debris. And they may have to come back and do multiple passes. I wanted to mention tires are not covered by FEMA. Concrete and bricks generally are not covered. Now, there's always a little bit of that stuff mixed in with C&D, as we all know, but if it's large amounts, they do not cover that. Right away, that's at least some guidance you can get out. Tires won't be collected and concrete is not collected, but everything else are categories that they do collect. They don't collect household trash. Typically, this is as if you just produce trash and then you are also cleaning out your flood debris and you decide to put your trash in with it. They're not they don't want that. And they try to have a very clean line on that. We do have in writing that black contractor bags will be collected, I think, if our contractor is engaged and reimbursed by FEMA. I think there's FEMA individual in writing saying, yeah, there's nothing that prevents that. But that was also a showdown we had. So it's an evolving space. On HHW, and maybe this best on if you take it offline with some of these folks, like talking to Theron later on. But we do know, as Anna said, there's some businesses that have been impacted that didn't even generate waste because they sold products, and now all their product line is waste. And the question, I don't know if Theron is here. Let me just see the people. He's very busy today, as I know many of you are.
Theron is not in the meeting.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, so we'll have to follow up with him afterwards. There's a temporary setup at the City Hall in Montpelier for HHW collection, and there's a Berry City event tomorrow. And is anyone from Chittenden here? I think there was one individual. Chittenden Solid Waste. No.
I don't believe so.
Okay. I know some districts have served others. I know Northwest helped Lamoille with a collection. I know Mark Shea, you've offered to help Esther with a collection of HHW, and I know that the Chittenden cleaned out Montpelier, which was helped to stand up by Central Vermont Solid Waste District 2 days ago or yesterday. So I really value that you guys are pitching in and helping each other. I have no guarantees on money or FEMA, as we've discussed at this moment. And that is hard when you're in the midst of a disaster and people are saying, where do I bring this? You told me to separate it. A lot of this material, like paint cans, are fine to sit until an HHW event. In many cases, it's not freezing weather. They might be able to drive to another Sherwin-Williams 3 towns over that is part of the paint care program and deposit them there. You know, as long as they're not all just caked in mud. But most of the ones I brought out of buildings were not. They were in pretty good shape. Anna, is there anything else you want me to say?
I guess I hope to put some kind of guidance or press release or something to put some information out to the businesses in the Barry Montpelier area as soon as we can write it, which is probably by tomorrow. To say if you know, hazardous materials that have been damaged cannot be put in the trash. They have to be segregated. They have to be managed according to our rules. But secondly, I want to give them guidance. I don't want to stop there and just say, like, you just can't put it in the trash. I'm done. I want to say you can bring them to the Montpelier Town Hall, or you can bring them to the Barry HHW event. So I just want to confirm that if I say that to them and businesses show up from like the hardware store, from wherever, with whatever damaged bottles of whatever they have in the basement or whatever products that, you know, they have small quantities of that they now need to get rid of, that they will not be turned away. So I'm not giving them the wrong guidance. And that's the way it's actually going to work. So really, I guess I want confirmation that what I would like to tell people is actually accurate and reasonable. And this is specifically for, I think, for the Barry Montpelier businesses, because that's really where the concentrated amounts of businesses are. And the cleanouts are happening now, and we are worried that the contractors that are doing the cleanouts have no idea that there are hazardous waste rules out there, and they're just throwing everything into the dumpster. But also, if we're not providing some kind of a convenient way for these businesses to get rid of the stuff, that they are gonna go into the dumpster, because that's gonna be the most convenient thing for them to do in the moment. And we can't be out supervising cleanouts.
I believe in the Southern Windsor Wyndham District, Tom Kennedy and Esther Fishman have some of these businesses as well. And I believe Johnson, Cambridge, not a lot of businesses, but Johnson, Cambridge and Jeffersonville got flooded pretty badly as well, and might also. So it's a really tough time to give people expectations. These are, we have a minimum standard of 2 collection events per year, and some people have those scheduled for the fall, but they're not on right now. So yeah, I struggle with the guidance as much as anybody. And go ahead, Karen.
I just want you to know that I have been calling a lot of the hardware stores that have EPR programs, and the Barry Ace Hardware, Theron is already working with him. So I have been reaching out to those locations that might have some of that stuff. And I'll continue to do that.
Thanks, Karen. So Anna, we will get you connected with Theron offline, so
Okay.
you can try and figure out what options are available. There may be a need for some people to store some of this stuff for a period of time, and that can be really hard. I know businesses I've seen are literally trying to store their inventory they're saving so that they can rebuild and get it back in, and not have people steal the inventory that's outside. So it's a complete mess right now, especially if you're a small business owner, or even if you're a corporate like Dollar General.
I just think if we don't provide, in this moment, if we don't provide a convenient, reasonable solution to them, is going in the trash, and that's what's gonna happen. And it's gonna end up at the landfill.
Yeah.
And there's nothing we can do about it other than come up with a better, more convenient way for them to manage it right now.
Yeah.
Telling people to store it in a flooded basement that they're trying to clean out until the next collection event is not a reasonable guidance that I'm willing to give them.
Yeah, and Kelly, just so you know, in everything I've been doing, I've only been in 2 media interviews, but I did express the safety of solid waste workers. I'm really worried about pressurized gas coming out onto a tip floor, being in a bale and a loader pushing into it, I have no idea, and somebody's walking by at that moment. These things are real, they're there. I mean, you see battery fires normally in the day-to-day, but this one is going to be something of a whole other beast potentially. So I'm sorry, folks, that I'm not delivering better news. And let me just pause. I did invite some folks from EPA here. What I want to, before I go to them and put them on the spot, I think Michael's here still from EPA. And if not, I apologize. But I want to say this. There's sort of 3 types of resources that I'm aware of right now. If you need to go.
I'm gonna go.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Anna. Those resources are local, public, and private. We've talked about Casella. We've talked about many private haulers who are doing a lion's share of the work right now. They're also public. Municipal trucks are running. Some people are asking, can I use my dump truck? Casella, can I bring this up to your facility in my dump truck? Everything is happening right now to meet this need, which is great. And the expectation I've heard is that needs to happen before you contact the SEOC, that those resources are supposed to be exhausted. However, I don't want to discourage people from saying, oh, there's no point, I'm not even going to call, because I know Barry, Berlin, and Montpelier are going to get some services, I think, out of this. The next stage is if those services can't meet it, those local needs, and this goes for HHW too, this goes for the Mark Shea helping out Esther potentially, or the John Letty helping out Lamoille and Johnson. If those resources can't meet it, Ceres Environmental Services is available. It's not supposed to compete with the private sector. They are working to stand up a station at CV right now, which is going to make CV even more complicated for Kelly's life and Casella's life. But they are working on that currently. And then the last one is the EPA, not necessarily last, but I've been learning more about what the EPA can do. They have been on site in Esther's region, in Tom Kennedy's region. They have been giving guidance on separating out HHW, and they said that people were doing it. Are any of my colleagues here from EPA who might just be able to talk about what they've been seeing on the ground, what towns you visited?
Sure. Yep. Mike Kofsky with EPA Region 1. As Josh mentioned, we recently received a mission assignment from FEMA that deals with not only the HHW mission, but also with responding to any oil or hazardous materials that were released due to the flooding. We just got boots on the ground yesterday. First day, he spent mostly in the Weston, Ludlow area and Proctorsville and Cavendish. Most of the folks he talked to there had been separating their HHW from the rest of their flood debris. He spoke to a couple fire chiefs from those towns who were well informed and had been telling people, you know, to separate their HHW, and if there were transfer stations or locations that were accepting HHW. So from what he was informing me, it sounded like most people were well informed of, you know, the process and the infrastructure that is currently in place. And Josh, I think it might be worthwhile for me, you, and Kathy Young, the EPA Incident Commander for this response, to get together and see if there's something we can do HHW related. I don't want to overpromise anything on this call, especially with the limited amount of funding we received from FEMA to date. I want to make sure it's spent appropriately. So I think it might be worthwhile after this call, maybe later this evening or tomorrow, the three of us get on a call and see what we can offer.
Yeah, I do know that from what I've gathered from Kathy Jameson, my predecessor, there was some EPA collections done after Hurricane Irene in 2011 when stuff was staged. And so, you know, I guess I want to say this again. I worked with my family and my 11-year-old daughter picking up the most gross hazardous waste and bringing it with a garden cart through downtown Montpelier, dodging, you know, major trucks to place it in a pile, and only to find that a thing of lighter fluid, a gallon thing, was leaking on me in the parking lot. And I was like, oh my God. So I've done this crazy stuff myself, and I know people here have done it too. And my feeling is that a lot of this stuff was sitting to begin with before. A lot of it's already gotten wet from a flood. If it can sit outside safely, at least it's not burning down somebody's house. And if it's away from the debris pile, it doesn't catch that on fire. Yeah, Kelly Gleason, go ahead.
And this might be a question that you guys need to sort of hash out later and get back to me on, but my question would be for Michael. Do we, as a private entity, do we have EPA to call if it makes it to us and it's extremely hazardous? And what if we uncover it and it's already at the transfer station or it's already at the landfill? Can we lean on you for that?
Sorry, I was still muted. I was saying, I don't think I can get you that answer right now, but I can definitely make some calls and see what we can do about it. And like I said, I think, Josh, it might be appropriate to have some higher level conversations about what we can provide to the municipalities and individual towns and potentially private entities.
I think what's happening right now is we're still in reaction mode, and I'm not able to get a good handle on what the need is. And guess what? For HHW, let's stay on that for a minute. There's not going to be a need if everybody dumpsterized it. It's all going to go through Kelly and endanger those workers, which is going to be really not good. I really don't want to hear that somebody got hurt because of something we could have avoided, especially since a lot of this stuff is stable once it's not mixed and not spilled. So I guess what I'm thinking is, if we can get people to separate it, even on their own properties, that's one win. If we can get an idea of how many are out there, which I think people like Esther, people like Mark Shea, people like Theron and Tom Kennedy and Mary O'Brien are great at collecting data on what is the need. We just passed a historic household hazardous waste producer responsibility bill because everybody on this call demonstrated the need. The governor signed that bill. That is not a normal thing for this administration to sign. And I'm not necessarily opining on one way or the other, just saying this is demonstrating a need. I need to know with Shannon Choquette here, what is the need? And a lot of this material is going to be better collected if it's brought to a central location. That will be most affordable. So, you know, if people can set up temporary sites, we have been allowing that. Mia set out guidance on that to all SWMEs. And it was also sent, I think, Kelly, to transfer stations as well.
Yep.
I mean, even if we have temporary staging areas where there's a tarp, there's some pallets, and it's not going to get crushed by a moving loader, I still think that's a win. Also, it's out of the waste stream, so it doesn't set an MBI trailer on fire, which has happened before. So, you know, if we know it's there and it needs to get picked up, I'm hoping that somewhere along the line we can shift resources around to do that. I think where Matt and I aren't able to control FEMA, and as I've said to this group before, the Solid Waste Management Assistance Fund has multiple competing priorities on it. I'm not saying it's never going to be used for this. I'm just saying it has to be balanced with whatever else we have going on at that moment. So I think we're going to have to assess what that need is. But the first step is to tell Shannon Choquette what your need is. And Shannon, I think the message for whether it's a Kelly, we have this much material, we're setting aside this. I think the first thing is, where is the location? And eventually we're going to get how much material is there, but that's going to evolve. On Tuesday, it's 2 5-gallon buckets. By Friday, it's a truckload. And then we got cleaned out, and now it's another truckload 2 weeks from now. So go ahead, Kel.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'll touch base with Mike and Pat and just see currently what we've got, if we've got anything staged, if how much at the busiest locations. And Shannon, I'll get that to you.
And I also think, Shannon, we can work with Anna to get her team. I know she's interested in a press release. I have a feeling calling these businesses, if Esther gives Shannon a list of businesses she knows is impacted, to find out what their needs are, or if Esther or Mary O'Brien or Susan Alexander can call the Johnson businesses and find out who needs help, or the hazardous waste program staff can call some of these EPA registered generators and find out what their needs are. I have a feeling the phone calls are, if there's somebody to answer it because their store is flooded, are as effective as anything to find out what that business need is. So I think there's some data collection we still need to do. I want to appreciate my EPA colleagues for being here. And I will try and set up a call with you, Mike, offline with maybe with Anna as well, so we can talk through it. Mike Nucci is managing, he's in the hazardous waste program and on the spills team. So he's doing dual roles, and he's talking to EPA regularly about their capacity for spill response. And so he's a conduit for us for possible HHW services as well. Esther, go ahead.
Two things. Can we set up another call so you could find out all of the information that's been asked of you? And I forgot the other question. Sorry, I've got a whole list here.
I think absolutely we can set up another call. Today's Wednesday. I'm going to prioritize Friday because I need a little bit of time to see. I'm curious if I can get a FEMA person here. These are municipalities who've been empowered by their towns to be leaders on solid waste. You are those people. It's much better to hear from FEMA directly than from me. I was shocked that the FEMA rep I talked to had never seen their guidance on debris separation. So that's a bad starting point, but I will do my best to get somebody, and we'll get a call out to you.
Josh, can you give us the contact information again for the SEOC?
If I might inject, this is Karen. So we have been putting the recordings on YouTube, and Alyssa Eichler has been sending out the notifications for the links of those. The last recording we did had all of those numbers listed on the first page of the recordings. The SEOC number is 800-347-0488.
Stephen Young's number.
802-261-5823.
But I would direct towns to call the 800 number. Esther, if there's any question in your mind, visit the League of Cities and Towns website. This 800 number is right on the top in red letters. Flood, debris, help. Call the SEOC.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. have a good Wednesday afternoon. So appreciate you being here and all your work, especially to my SWME colleagues, Casella, and to the staff of the solid waste program. Thanks for showing up.